We begin with the revenge of the nerds, computer nerds that is. The people who spent hours creating code went from geeks to gurus. Many of them became incredibly wealthy as the titans of the new information age. An icon of this generation is Steve Wozniak. He created the first personal computer from Apple. Apple, as you know, was able to use that technology to not only change the look and function of personal computers, the technology has also evolved into some of the most popular consumer products out there, namely the iPod. Steve's official role with Apple ended years before the iPod launch, but his influence looms large. Now he's speaking out to MMT about his role making computer history.
I learned computers not in courses, not really in books. I learned it by accident, stumbling across things that other people had built and designed and written in manuals, written in some journal articles, and I learned that way. And I learned it at a young age.
A computer legend is what Steve Wozniak became. In 1975, he was the first person to attach a keyboard and a monitor to a computer, and the PC was born. That computer, built by Wozniak and marketed by his friend Steve Jobs, was the foundation of Apple Computer.
We believed it would be a revolution. We believed that eventually everyone would have a use for computers.
Wozniak's new autobiography, I Was written, he says, to set the record straight about how Apple began and the role he played in the company's history.
I would go back to the early stories over and over. It was just wrong. They weren't there. They're just sort of assuming that things came out of the blue sky. How did these things get made? How important was it? What were the influences? Sometimes they just have the story from told not even knowing I existed. So I did want to get that whole story told because it's an interesting one.
The story actually begins long before the creation of Apple. Wozniak was an electronics whiz from a very early age. For a science fair in the 8th grade, he invented a machine that could add and subtract zeros and ones. He learned most of what he knew from his father, an engineer for defense contractor Lockheed.
I admired what he did. I wanted to be like him. I watched him work long and hard on projects. He helped me work on science fair projects, but he didn't ever say, Steve, you should go this way. Here's what you should be doing. He didn't really infiltrate my life with, here's an electronics thing to build, here's another, here's another, here's another.
The other significant male influence during Wozniak's formative years was his good friend Steve Jobs, now the company's CEO. Jobs was equally critical to the formation of Apple. He had all the showmanship and business savvy that Wozniak lacked.
But today, for the first time ever, I'd like to let Macintosh speak for itself.
Hello, I'm Macintosh. It sure is great to get out of that bag.
The company's Apple II and Macintosh computers were a sensation. But as Apple became a thriving corporation, Wozniak chose to withdraw from an active role in the company. He says corporate life just didn't suit him. However, he's still a part of Apple, and Apple will always be a part of Steve Wozniak.
My relationship is cordial, friendly. I always get a small paycheck out of loyalty. They respect me. I represent Apple where I go. I'm still good friends with Steve Jobs, and we talk, see each other now and then. We don't really, we don't live the same life and go out together and party and all that.
Apple Computers made Steve Jobs a multi-billionaire, but not Wozniak. He's rich, but not Steve Jobs rich. That's because Wozniak gave away much of his stock decades ago to dozens of Apple employees.
I don't need that much, so yes, I gave a lot of them the stock they deserved, and others I sold stock at a really good price that would make them a lot of money when we went public, that were in the company rather than sell to some big financial bigwig outside the company. Yeah, very unusual thing. It was called the Woz Plan in Apple. About 40 engineers and marketing people in the company got to own some good portion of it.
Well, Jobs got all the fame and most of the fortune. Wozniak has become an icon for computer enthusiasts, something he accepts, but it still surprises him.
I don't understand why somebody who is good at technology and hooking parts together and making devices that work would ever be like at this level of almost notoriety that I am.
Not just notoriety, immortality. Wozniak is a member of the Inventors Hall of Fame, alongside the likes of Thomas Edison, the Wright brothers, and Alexander Graham Bell.
I meet a lot of the other inventors who are still alive. So much of we have in common. The way we thought as kids, the sort of things we wanted to do with our time. But the one universal thing is we almost always wanted to work alone. Just work on our own ideas and build it ourselves and get something achieved, whether or not other people believed in it, were paying us to do that. It's a really strange thing. The inventor doesn't want to follow the rules of how you're going to build the next thing in the world.
Well, after stepping away from Apple, Wozniak spent 10 years teaching computers to fifth graders. He's still into technology. He says he has a weakness for those Segway personal transporters. He owns 13 of them, and he's a member of the Segway Polo team. And a reminder, I want to hear from you. If you have a question, call or email on the web. You find us at cn8.tv. And our Money Matters voicemail box is 1-877-862-9374.